Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, the sins that betray us. It was a warm Parisian evening, and fog rose from the Seine. It mingled with the smog of industry and clouded the gas street lights that dimly lit cobblestone streets. Beside the Seine, in the 4th arrondissement, was La Force prison, within which was the man Eugène Vidocq, whose wrists were shackled to the dungeon wall by cold steel chains and ankles bound by manacles. Eugène had black, curly hair and long, thick sideburns that taunted the corners of his mouth. He wore rags. His nose was still bruised from the scuffle to detain him when 5 men were needed to pin him down and capture him. "Monsieur," he said, speaking to Julien de Veria, the Parisian chief of police. "I became a criminal the night my father had me arrested as a boy. When those gendarmes had turned up and taken him away to a cell that night, he had felt betrayed, devastated, and humiliated by his father. Above all, he had felt angry, and that anger had stayed with him all his life, a chip on his shoulder that had been ever present in his interactions and informed his life choices." Julien sat in the opposite corner of the dungeon on a wooden stool. His top hat lay in his lap, and his walking cane leant against the wall. He remained as still as a gargoyle. "Your trial for treason commences at first light, and you wish to reminisce about your father. Do not waste my time." The flame of torches lining the walls flickered. A rat scurried between iron bars and retreated into the shadows. "I have watched the guillotine sever the head of my dear friend César Herbeau. This cannot be my fate." He shook his head. The surprised look upon César's face as his head fell to the ground was forever etched in his memory. He could not shake it, could not recall how César used to smile, or the jovial times they had shared in local brothels. "You have deserted from the army. You have stolen, you have forged, and you have destroyed marriages. Why would I care about your fate?" Orange from the flickering flames glinted in Julien's eyes. A distant scream echoed around the chamber. It briefly registered to Eugène like the sound of a new prisoner being subdued into his iron attire. "Monsieur, I crave a life no longer on the run," said Eugène, thinking of his recent arrest. His estranged wife, who left him for a soldier, had found him back in Paris and reported him to the gendarmerie. He could never be free while the sins of his past stalked his being. "Such is the fate of a criminal. Why would I care about what you crave? You are wasting my time," Julien said, snatching up his cane and smashing it against the stone wall. He stood. "Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, let me tell you what I can do for you, so as not to waste any more of your time." Julian pushed out the backs of his jacket and sat carefully on his stool. "Proceed. Thieves adore me. Hardened wretches esteem me. I drink and mingle in their circles. I have their trust. I know their hearts. I will gather their secrets and share them with you. We have informants already. Why would I need you, monsieur? I will be the best of them all. Of your informants, do any have as much esteem amongst the other criminals? Of your informants, have any been as cunning as me to escape prison so many times, even dressed as a nun to avoid detection? Sir, I will go to lengths those simpletons could not even imagine imagining. I will be your best informant, monsieur. I know this without a doubt, and I think you do too. I can't trust you, monsieur. When my late father had me arrested as a boy, my fate was sealed. In my mind, I became a criminal. It has taken my whole life to realize he did that out of love. I can be different. I can be of use to society. I can be the man my father knew I could be. I don't know if you can, monsieur. I've seen the end. I've seen my friend's head freed from his body by guillotine. I know that God's grace has all but kept me alive. I will be as devious as I was in crime, but use those skills to catch the criminals and make Paris safer. He shook his head. Just as the rats carry the plague, I fear you spread a vile truth. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, just give me one last chance. Please. Julian was silent. We will hold off your trial in the morning. But know this, you are one mistake from execution. I want intelligence, actionable intelligence, or you'll be seeing your father sooner than you had imagined. He stood, gathered his cane, placed his top hat on his head, and waved to a guard outside the cell to let him out. Eugene put his head back on the stone wall and blinked away a tear. He would be tireless. He would be disciplined. He would use the tricks and the cons and the black arts he had learned. It was clear that Julian barely believed what was said, but that was fine, because he knew what was there in his heart. And it was true, and with time, he would prove it. He felt the anger that had fueled his heart for so long start to thaw. The miserable wretch that was his soul felt a flicker of hope. His father had loved him and had wanted him to be the best he could be, no matter how tragically he had tried to teach that lesson. And now he understood that it was only ever a lesson. He could become the man his father knew he could be, a woman of loose morals. Neha covered her head with the dupatta of her salwar kameez and wrapped it across her shoulder. She put on the oversized black sunglasses borrowed from her roommate, Kavya, who, along with the rest of the second-year students of Kasturba Medical College, was attending the first lecture of the day. Dr. Swami was one of the lenient professors, and students often got away with marking proxy attendance for their friends. As Neha checked the pen drive in her pocket for the 10th time, she prayed that Kavya would successfully mark her proxy attendance today. Her life depended on it. Leaving behind her Honda Activa parked in the hostel parking, Neha hailed an auto rickshaw 100 meters from the college gate. There could be CCTV cameras outside shops in the market where she was headed. Arriving in an auto rickshaw, dressed in a plain white salwar kameez with her head covered and most of her face obscured by the oversized sunglasses, would make her indistinguishable from the other women walking on the streets, with the auto rickshaw noisily chugging towards the market. Neha fought off a fresh wave of nausea as she recalled the threatening calls and obscene WhatsApp messages she and her friends had been receiving for the past 6 days, while the boys were being threatened with their limbs being hacked off and their eyes ripped out of the sockets. The girls were being terrorized with warnings of brutal rapes and horrifying acid attacks. The message was loud and clear. Withdraw your testimony or face the consequences. Due to fear of backlash and pressure from their families, 10 out of the 12 students had already withdrawn their testimonies, including the boys and girls who had been hospitalized. After all, the right-wing organization they were up against had strong political affiliations and big muscle. In the past few years, the organization members had been accused of vandalism, ransacking, and violence against minorities. But unfortunately, there had been no convictions. The Mangalore city air was heavy with humidity, but Neha felt a fresh chill sweep through her body as she imagined the repercussions for herself and her family if the organization found it was she who provided the incriminating evidence. Her fear was swiftly replaced by sorrow as she recalled the phone conversation with her family 2 days after the incident. I have already spoken to Mathur. Your testimony has been withdrawn, Neha's father had said on the phone. Mr. Mathur was the police commissioner of Mangalore City and an old friend of Neha's father. But Papa, how could you do that? I've been urging all my friends to testify. How can I back out? You will do as you're told. As it is, you've brought shame upon the family. I have brought shame upon the family. A heavy silence had settled on the phone line. Neha could hear her mother admonishing her father in the background. Beta, we care about you. We don't want you to get hurt. Her mother's voice was taut with anxiety. But I'm already hurt, Ma. I'm hurt, and you're asking me to let them go scot-free so that they can keep doing this over and over again. Another pause. Beta, your father has invested a lot of money in your education. You know how much a medical degree costs. I know, Ma, but do not spoil your future. One day, You will get married. Who will marry you knowing that you were involved in this incident? It was the only time in the 19 years of her life that a swear word escaped Neha's lips in front of her parents. Horrified, her mother had returned the phone to her father. If you do not do as you're told, we'll bring you home and get you married. It's your decision. The line had gone dead. Neha retrieved her mobile from her pocket and dialed Karen's number. No response. Again. With a pang of horror, Neha wondered if he had blocked her. I just want to know you're okay, she typed. Call me, please. Neha replaced the phone in her pocket, bracing herself for the next step. The auto rickshaw had reached its destination. Up ahead, Neha could see Ramu's internet cafe, the seedy corner shop at the end of the crowded market. As Neha clutched the pen drive in her pocket and headed towards the internet cafe, all she could hear was the sound of her pounding heart. "6 days ago, never have I ever," paused Raj, the lanky second-year student of Kasturba Medical College, had 2 girlfriends, or boyfriends, at the same time. As 4 boys and 2 girls brought their glasses to their lips for a drink, Neha sighed. This game was turning out to be duller than she'd imagined. It was either that, or she'd led a pretty boring life up to now, because her drink lay untouched on the table. Neha had never kissed in public. In fact, never kissed at all. Never smoked a cigarette. Never flunked an exam. Never cheated on a test. Never smoked a joint. Never sang or danced in public. Never traveled to a foreign country. Heck, this was the farthest she'd been from her home in New Delhi. So yes, her life had been pretty uneventful. Neha's eyes were drawn again to Karan, sitting across the round table, the colored disco lights from the dance floor brightening his face in all sorts of delightful ways. She wondered what he thought of her, or whether he thought of her at all. He seemed to prefer her company to anyone else's in college, and he often blushed in a childlike, innocent way whenever she caught him staring at her. But did he love her the way she loved him? 2 waiters appeared at their table, carrying plates of steaming paneer tikka, juicy chicken tikka, and colorful vegetable platters. The 12 hungry teenagers devoured the food within minutes and ordered another round of snacks. The game resumed with Priya, a portly girl with a shrill voice declaring, "Never have I ever been in love." Sounds faded and sights blurred as Neha's universe shrunk to the space between Karen's eyes. Those gorgeous brown eyes that were looking right at her and conveying feelings that neither of them had been able to express. As though mirroring each other's actions, Neha and Karan lifted their glasses and sipped their drinks, all the while looking at each other. Finishing his drink in a single gulp, Karan excused himself and went towards the exit of the pub. Taking a cue, Neha followed him outside, passing by a group of 30-something-year-olds with children's birthday caps balanced precariously on their heads, gyrating to Badshah's Abi, to Party Shuru Hui Hai. The party has just begun. On the dance floor, Neha found Karan in the parking outside, leaning against his Maruti Swift, a lit cigarette in his hand. "All okay?" she asked, approaching him. "All good," he said, smiling. "So, are you enjoying your first party?" It was a running joke among her classmates that how Neha Kapoor, the supreme nerd, had artfully avoided all parties in the first year of college and focused solely on her studies, while the rest of her classmates had spent every weekend in a drunken stupor. "It's not so bad," she said. Karen chuckled. "It won't kill you to admit you're having a blast." The 3 drinks she'd had before they started playing the awful game dominated her senses. Neha wondered whether his lips had always been so full and red and juicy looking, or had she been blind the entire last year. Neha felt his hand on her arm, the pressure maddeningly exciting. His face was tantalizingly close to hers, and she could smell the cigarette on his breath. Wait a minute. Was he pushing her away? "You're drunk. Let's get you something to eat, shall we?" His voice seemed to be coming from far away, and as Neha followed him inside, she realized with a pang of mortification that she'd just tried to kiss him, and he'd pushed her away. Neha cursed silently as she took her seat at the table, avoiding looking in the direction she'd been looking all evening. She nudged her friend Kavya, sitting next to her. "Meet me in the bathroom," she whispered. Kavya peered at her friend in the semi-darkness of the pub. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I just need to talk." Taking extreme care to look anywhere but at him, Neha ambled towards the bathroom, wishing she could disappear. She pushed open the door with the Queen of Hearts sign hanging on it and entered the empty ladies' bathroom. Roughly, she splashed some water on her face and gaped at her reflection in the mirror. 3 drinks, and she'd transformed into a girl who tried to kiss a boy in public, a boy who wasn't even her boyfriend. And the headache, oh, the mighty headache building up behind her eyes. She should have stopped at 1 drink. The whole party experience was so overrated. Neha wasn't sure she'd ever go to another party. What was that? Neha closed the tap and listened attentively. Somebody, a man, was yelling in the local language, and she couldn't understand a word. No, it was more than one man shouting. Loud, angry voices coming from just outside the bathroom door. The music stopped abruptly. The voices grew louder. What was going on? Before Neha could reach the door, a girl's scream pierced the air, sending a chill down her spine. With trembling, cold hands, Neha pushed open the door and peered through the tiny crack. The bright lights hurt her eyes. A group of 25 men, all in a high state of excitement, had barged into the pub and encircled her friends, their faces convoluted in fury. These young men were hollering at the teenagers in a language she couldn't understand while making aggressive, threatening gestures. All Neha could catch were the words drinking, smoking, girls, and loose morals. The second-year male students had formed a circle around the four girls, who huddled together in the center, terrified, while the group of belligerent men hurled abuses at them. Neha watched in horror as one of the men punched Karan on the nose. He stumbled backwards, holding his bleeding nose. It was at that precise moment that pandemonium erupted, with first flying through the air, crushing and snapping and breaking bones, a congealed mass of humanity, shoving and yelling and crying, heads and limbs sticking out at grotesque angles. Neha tore her gaze away to look for the staff of the pub, the manager, somebody who could help, but there was nobody in sight. The older partygoers seemed to have fled, leaving the teenagers at the mercy of these goons, trying to be inconspicuous. Neha hunkered low on the floor and dialed Mather-uncle's number with shaky hands. It was 11:05 p.m. Mathur-uncle picked up on the third ring. "Neha, is everything okay?" His voice was alert and tense. Clearly, the call had been unexpected. Neha relayed everything as clearly and precisely as she could. "I'm dispatching units right away. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Lock the door. Stay in the bathroom." Neha closed her eyes, teardrops running down her cheeks. Her friends were being beaten to a pulp by these fanatics, and all she'd done was make a phone call while hiding in the bathroom, like the coward that she was. The screams were piercing her eardrums, firing bolts of agony to her brain. She couldn't just sit here and wait. She had to do something. But what could she do? If she went outside, she would get beaten up too. How could she help then? Neha glanced at her sneakers, grateful she wasn't wearing heels, and turned on her phone's camera. She opened the bathroom door and pressed record. The longer Neha witnessed the dastardly act, the more she felt infuriated and emboldened. She stepped out of the bathroom in her black, knee-length dress and her red sneakers, zooming in on the face of each attacker one by one. The girls had been yanked away from the boys and were being slapped and dragged by their hair by a group of 10 men who had surrounded them. On the other side, the boys were being brutally kicked and punched by another group. Neha drifted towards the exit of the pub while continuing to record the ghastly events. When she was sure she had captured every man's face on camera, Neha put her phone away and whistled loudly. Some men turned around and spotted her. They began yelling at each other. "Catch me if you can, assholes!" With these words, Neha turned on her heels and sped towards the exit of the pub. A group of men dashed after her, breaking the circle around the girls, who pushed the rest of the men out of their way and hurried to the exit. Fear pumped through Neha's veins like adrenaline, propelling her through the parking and towards the main road. deserted at this time of the night. 15 men were chasing her, bellowing and cursing and making obscene gestures. Neha wasn't sure how long she could outrun them or where she could go. Her college was 6 kilometers away, and even if she ran all that distance, she didn't think her pursuers would stop at the gate as Neha turned left at a traffic signal. She could hear the police siren blaring, and just a moment later, the headlights of 2 police jeeps blinded her. She paused and spun around to see that the men had stopped, turned 180 degrees, and were now running away from her and the police jeeps. The fusty, windowless cubicle of the internet cafe contained a bulky monitor hooked to a CPU, at least 10 years old. As Neha plugged in the pen drive, her mobile began to ring. "Karan, where are you? Are you okay?" she said breathlessly, an ominous pause. "Neha, I'm okay. Listen carefully. I called to say goodbye," he said in a hoarse voice. "What? What happened?" "My parents have transferred me to another medical college in another city." "Why? Where are you going?" "I can't say." "Look, I'm sorry. Just stay away from this whole business, okay? It's the only way to stay safe. These people..." His voice trailed off. "Karan, I have to go now." "Goodbye, Neha." The line went dead. Neha stared at her mobile, feeling like the whole world was spinning beneath her. A news app on her mobile flashed a news report about a statement by the founding member of the right-wing organization that had attacked them 6 days ago. "These girls come from all over the country, drink, smoke, and walk around in the night, spoiling the traditional girls of the city. Why should girls go to pubs? Are they going to serve their future husbands alcohol? Should they not be learning how to make rotis, Indian bread? Pubs and bars should be for men only." We wanted to make sure that all the women in the city are home by 7 p.m. Neha gaped at her phone in mute disbelief. The computer screen prompted her to create a new account. It was the anonymous account through which she intended to upload the video and broadcast it. Neha brought her hands to the keyboard and began typing the account name. "A woman of loose morals." Author's note. To read about the true events that inspired this story, search for Mangalore pub attack. Sadly, the 26 men charged with the assault walked free due to lack of evidence, despite the assault being caught on camera. The voice thief. Tom, have you ever been in that situation when you are in a serious emergency, but you can't tell anyone? Well, if you have, you might have a similar story to mine. It all happened last year. I was at McDonald's for my best friend's birthday party when it happened. I was just walking around when a man in a Ronald McDonald costume walked past me. He looked at me and said, Come here, child. Okay, that was a bit weird, and I was now questioning if this really was a man in a suit. So I kept my distance. That made him mad. I said, "Come here, child." He sneered. By this point, I was freaking out. This man was crazy. I had to warn the others. So that was when I did the only thing I could do. I screamed. That is, I tried to scream. Ronald looked at me and grinned. "Do you want your precious voice back?" he asked. I ran, unable to warn anyone of this monster. That was all I could do. And now, 1 year on, I still am. Okay, I know you're wondering, what on earth does that have to do with anything? Well, McDonald's is about to close down, so they're throwing a goodbye party. I'm going to go. I know, my first party in a while. There is but one reason I'm going. My voice. I need my voice back. I would give anything just to hear it again. I'm getting this Ronald McDonald guy back for what he has done. Ronald, my trap has worked. For years I have stolen the voices of children and added them to my collection. Each child has had their life ruined, and they don't have the brains to write a note to warn everyone else. But I have now become bored with my collection, and I decided, why not just capture the kids? I do have an enormous basement to put them in, and who would miss those brats anyway? My plan is simple. Capture all the kids that go to the throwaway party. Tom, the party is on. There are sales everywhere I look. Kids run around like crazy. I try not to get sidetracked by all the sales, but soon find myself in the queue. That's when I saw him, Ronald McDonald. It was time for revenge. Ronald, I can't believe how dumb this kid is. After I took his voice, he still comes to the party. Oh, well, I guess I'm in luck. So far, I have caught 30 kids. I'm going to give this one a jump scare. Tom, wait. Where on earth did that guy go? I sigh. Maybe I might see him again soon. That's when I felt a tap on my back. I turned around, and there he was, Ronald McDonald, his lips a blood-red color. "Come, child," he says. It's all a repeat of the first time we met. I forget revenge and run. And I won't stop this time. Ronald, the kid took the bait. He's running straight into my trap. Now it's time for some fun. Tom, okay. I know you're wondering how I ended up in this trap, but not even I know. I hear a creak as Ronald and McDonald enter the room. He holds my voice in one hand and a knife in the other. "Do you want your precious voice back?" he asked with a grin of pure evil. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I had no voice. That was when Ronald did something horrid. He killed my voice. He stabbed it. My voice screamed, and my throat went numb. My mission had failed. Ronald laughed, a wicked laugh. It was the type of laugh that freezes fire and melts ice. Then it occurred to me. I was going to die. Ronald, this kid has been an interesting type. The type that I like to turn into food. I seized him by the throat and carried him down a long passageway to the food processor. What food would I turn him into? A child nugget. Perfect. What a snack they will be. I'm drooling just thinking about it. Time to drop him in. Tom, I can't believe this. Pure cannibalism. Ronald let go. I fell down through the machine, landing in a pile of breadcrumbs. Before I could relocate, a huge roller ran over the top of me. I was knocked out cold. When I woke, I was in a freezer, marinating. Ronald McDonald sure has a bad recipe, I thought. It was cold. I was surprised I wasn't dead yet. Then, out of nowhere, a claw grabbed me and I still shudder to think about it. It dunked me in grease. The grease was boiling. And that's when I realized I was being deep fried. I could feel life draining from my body. I tried to climb out of the grease, but it was too slippery. I was going to be a snack for Ronald McDonald. By now, I was just a blob of food in the universe. My breathing slowed, and with 5 minutes left, I would be cooked. Every second became a struggle. I was dying. 1 minute left. You can do this, I told myself. 30 seconds left. You can do this, I said, between each gulp of air. 10 seconds. I gave up. The heat swallowed me up the way Ronald McDonald will when I come out of here. The truth was clear. I couldn't do this. Ronald, ding. The door creaked open and slammed down on the floor. Out came my child nuggets. I licked my lips. Tasty. They smell delicious. I lifted one up and took a bite. Crunchy. Soon I have eaten them all. They should be on the menu. Oh well, I guess it's time to go upstairs. You never know who might be up there, just waiting to be taken. Past imperfect W. Mentions of mental and physical abuse. Bill sat bolt upright in the hotel bed, heart pounding to a familiar refrain. The dream had reasserted itself with a vengeance from the moment he'd seen the updated list of people attending the conference. One name had stood out. Dake Scratchard was the name of the boy who'd haunted Bill Brown's life more years than he cared to remember. Dreams fueled by past memories disturbed his nights when equal amounts of dread and fear surged through his veins, rendering him helpless. As always, the nightmare was a variation on a theme. In it, Bill was a teenage boy running from the gang. He often came close to evading capture, but at the last minute, tripped over his shoelaces or some other encumbrance. Then he found himself falling flat on his face outside the old school toilets, the inner doors of which rose up like whited sepulchres. Up close, he could see every cell of his tormentor's face. "Ginger needs to be taught a lesson," came out of that hate-filled mouth. A bully, aided by his contemptible band of followers, with their menacing chants of "Ginger, Ginger, Ginger." Even now, their words filled the corridors of his mind like a background hiss. "No!" The sound seemed to come from somewhere outside, as if it belonged to someone else. "Not him. You're just begging for it, Billy Ginger. If the teachers won't correct you, we must do it for them." Billy knew no teacher would come. They were never there when you needed them. In any case, the gang always had some lackey watching out. Soon they'd have him crawling on his hands and knees, scooting about like an insect while they kicked him on the hard stone floor, their mocking jeers running through him. He was nothing more than a piece of meat to be hauled about. For them, the high point was shoving his face into the toilet bowl. The stench was the least of it. Clinging for support, he tried to keep everything tight shut while they flushed. Knowing he could not hold out for long, he spluttered to be let go. Then, just as he was about to give up, a final flush signaled his release. He was pulled up, squirming like a rat from a sewer, and left heaving on the floor. For a few minutes, he lay there curled and defenseless, all resistance gone, until the next time, and the time after that. Something so primal, so feral. He could smell it now. Even after all this time, he was defined by it, as if the abuse had become part of a warped pattern of D and A, making him only half human. But somehow, he'd known he was worth more than that. At least his dog seemed to think so. Through it all, the only thing that kept Bill going was the thought of the black Labrador faithfully waiting in the porch. Back home, Kelpie licked away the wounds and salt tears, stayed beside him till the pain subsided. Without Kelpie, he would not have survived, for the purity of a dog's heart knows no bounds. Switching on the bedside lamp, Bill waited until his breathing steadied. Coughing, he climbed into a dressing gown and stepped out onto a small balcony. In the courtyard below, the air was prescient with a damp chill. A few lone trees were scattering leaves marking the onset of winter. Inhaling a sneaky cigarette, Bill considered his options. It had all happened so long ago, yet the dream had reignited the past, making him feel he could never escape its clutches. If Bill recited the facts of his life enough times, he almost convinced himself of their worth. On paper, he'd worked hard, got married and divorced, and had a son he barely saw. He'd mostly married his wife to please his father because she came from a better background, and look where that had got him. It wasn't his ex's fault if along the way he'd supplemented whatever was missing with a few women he was physically attracted to, but not much else. In the end, it had been like ships passing in the night, all except for Bella. With her, he'd come close to casting a loveless marriage aside, but in the end, something had stopped him. The risk of getting it wrong had been too great, but all that was in the past. Although Bella had recently returned to the company where they both worked, albeit in a less demanding role, he rarely saw her these days. And according to rumors, she was now with someone in the shower. Bill imagined washing the past down the plug hole. Soon he planned to do just that. The only fly in the ointment, of course, was Bella. He wasn't sure whether she'd be attending the conference. Really, bumping into her was the least of his worries. But if he did, so be it. He hadn't actually seen her name on the list of attendees, so it seemed unlikely. Overall, it would be easier if she didn't attend, because that afternoon, Bill was making his first big speech in his new role as Regional Operations Manager. As if there wasn't enough going on without having to deal with affairs of the heart. The speech, eagerly anticipated, was expected to be the highlight of the day. In the hotel room, examining the set of knives his father had given him as an 18th birthday present, Bill was confronted by powerful emotions. Before him were a dazzling array of sharp pieces, all with wooden handles for an extra firm grip. It was almost pleasurable selecting the one with the pointed end. He carefully placed it in a sheath and adding it to a concealed section of his briefcase. In the mirror, he observed hair that was thinning a little at the sides. Other than that, it was still thick and brown, with just a hint of chestnut. Impressive in a well-cut suit, he was tall enough to be considered distinguished. To some, his features might be regarded as handsome. His eyes, however, were preternaturally bright. Sighing deeply, he exited the room. Clutching his laptop and briefcase, he made his way along the plushly carpeted corridor, entered the lift, and headed the 3 floors down to the conference room area. Psyching himself up for whatever lay ahead, he focused on his achievements. Only by drawing on every retail milestone was he able to make sense of the wasteland that was his emotional life. His mind's eye framed the certificates that took pride of place on his home office wall, charting his journey from sales assistant to the coveted role of regional operations manager for one of the country's most successful chain stores. Stores that sold fashionable clothes and accessories for prices most people could afford. Bill's journey into a better life had only really begun when his parents had moved from a London suburb to a city in the Midlands. Then aged 15, He'd welcomed the move with open arms, for it had given him a chance to start afresh in a place where no one knew him, especially at school. He had loved walking unrecognized through the city's streets and visiting its ancient cathedral. One Saturday morning, plucking up courage, he'd walked into one of the city's department stores and landed himself a Saturday job in the menswear department. When he returned home, his mum made him a cup of tea, and Kelpie wagged a warm greeting. You could do a lot worse. They've got people queuing up to get a place in that store, his mum had commented. Then, examining him more closely, she observed, "You've darkened your hair. Isn't that what Elvis Presley did?" "I expect so. I never liked my natural color, and I want to fit in at this school." That was the closest he'd come to admitting the bullying at his old school. He never told anyone about the suicidal thoughts. Chazo, he couldn't miss her. Bella was a figure of light breaking the conference room formality and wearing the most distinctive outfit. To him, she was the classiest person there, surrounded as she was by an adoring team of managers at one of the middle tables. Distracted by her presence, he could hardly wait for a chance to speak to her. The chance came while she was lining up to choose from a tray of canapes during the lunch break. "I wasn't expecting you to be here, Bella," he said. "I wasn't expecting to be here, but there was a change of plan. It's so good to see you." He found himself saying, "Well, I missed the company and the people. I wasn't the right fit for the new position, even if it was a promotion. It seemed fortuitous when my old vacancy came up again." "So, you didn't have a problem with going back to your old role?" "There's no need to avoid using the word demotion. I won't be offended," she laughed. "I came to realize I didn't need all the hassle that goes with a high-powered job. I realized I'd made a mistake, and the opportunity came to rectify it. I want a simple life, especially now I'm single. Don't worry, it's all worked out for the best. He wasn't right for me either." Bill could hardly believe what he was hearing. "It's really good to see you," he said again. "I'm glad you think that," she said, smiling brightly. Catching up with Bella had been great. So much so, watching her sleeping the next morning, Bill had almost forgotten about the other thing. He decided he'd know what to do when the time came. If it came, Bill was pouring coffee when Bella opened her eyes. They were warm, like Kelpie's had once been. "That smells good," she said. "I remembered you like it's strong." The world outside remained foggy and damp, but for the moment, none of that mattered. Fully dressed, Bill joined Bella on the bed. "What's the matter? You look like you've got the world on your shoulders," she said kindly. "Nothing. Just the conference. A lot to think about." But that was only partly true. If only he could tell her what was really on his mind. Part of him wondered whether meeting Bella again was purely coincidental, or a sign he should let the past go, once and for all. He might have said more, but then the phone rang. "Good luck with the speech. Not that you're going to need it," Bella said, getting up and kissing him. Down. On the way to the conference room, Bill overheard a conversation between two hotel staff members. Are the cameras still out? Only on the third floor. Also, the ones by the bathroom. They're down, too. Okay, not good. How long before they are fixed? A few hours at most. Maintenance will get it sorted. It won't affect the general running of things. Bill felt almost disappointed to hear the news about the cameras. After his night with Bella, he'd been on the verge of scrapping his original plan. Now fate seemed to be pulling him back. Yet he still hadn't come across his nemesis. About 40 minutes into the second day of conference, a man best described as nondescript entered the hall. Head down, he weaved his way to the numbered seat. Bill clocked him, and his heart sank. Something of the man's stance reminded him of Dake Scratchard grown older. But was it him? He couldn't be sure. 2 hours into the conference, during the talk on sustainability, the man scurried towards one of the exits, and all doubt vanished. Shriveled he might be, but it was definitely Scratchard, galvanized into action. Bill left his seat and headed for the nearest exit. Gripping his case so tightly his fingers hurt, he followed the figure until he disappeared into the bathroom. Unless he had to, Bill generally avoided public bathrooms. But this was going to be the exception. Adrenaline flooding through him, he quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Other than a pulsing through his ears and the sound of a dripping tap, all was quiet. Then he heard a retching coming from one of the cubicles. A minute later, the door opened and Scratchard stepped out. Engrossed in his own suffering, he ran to the nearest sink and stood there heaving, watching unobserved. Bill was torn between revulsion and an intense hatred. Mostly, he was seized by a hatred for all he'd been put through, overcome by a rage for the way this pathetic being had ruined so much of his life. It was too late to change his mind now. The die was cast. Gripping the knife, he advanced, his anger rising to a peak. Suddenly, the bathroom door sprang open, and to his astonishment, Bella entered. She came and stood behind him, putting her arms round his waist. Then, opening his fist, she carefully removed the knife from his hand and put it behind her back. "It's not the answer," she whispered, hurriedly placing it in her bag. It all seemed to happen in slow motion. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Startled out of his sickness, Bill's childhood enemy locked eyes with his victim in the mirror. Both men were shaking, one from the effects of illness, the other from the horror of what might have been. "What the hell?" Scratchard broke out. Then there was a flash of recognition as the years fell back. "Surely not. I wasn't sure if it was you in the meeting, probably because your hair is different. But it's Ginger Bill, isn't it? Only the last time I saw you." The words trailed off, vanished into the unknown. "But you never did see me," Bill said through gritted teeth. "All you saw was a weak boy you could bully, because of his hair color. As I recall, the last time I saw you and your sick gang, you'd forced my head down the bog. Have you any idea what that does to someone? Did I do that? Dake's face reddened. I was a bit of a jerk in those days. If it's any consolation, life hasn't exactly treated me well. As you can see, I'm not a well man, the edges blurring. Bill felt the first stirrings of pity. What's actually wrong with you, Scratchard? Calling him by his surname felt like a minor victory. He'd never dared call him anything in school. Dake shook his head despairingly. If it's not one thing, it's another these days. I had heart trouble a few years ago, and now this. I keep having to running to the toilet and have a raging thirst. You need medical attention, Bella said unexpectedly. You're showing all the signs of severe diabetes. My father got like that before he was diagnosed. 10 minutes later, Bill was sitting with his childhood tormentor in the lobby, waiting for assistance. I'm sorry for making your school life hard, Dake muttered, unable to meet Bill's eyes. It was worse than that. You bullied me to the point I didn't feel life was worth living. Why did you? I need to know, Bill demanded. Dake searched what remained of his soul for answers. I don't know, he admitted at last. Maybe it made me feel more in control. Life was miserable at home, and at school, I was somebody in front of the other kids. The rest of the day passed in a blur. But Bill somehow found the strength to get through his talk. He got a good reception at the end, and he couldn't help noticing Bella was clapping the hardest. What made you come into the bathroom like that? He asked her much later. I couldn't believe it when I saw you there. You kept saying his name in your sleep, saying you're dead over and over. I haven't forgotten the nightmares you had when we were together before. Imagine what would have happened if you hadn't appeared, Bella. It doesn't bear thinking about, she said. If you want us to make a go of this, you've got to promise me you're going to get help. The past will always get in the way if you don't. It turned out to be an easy promise to keep. More than a year after that fateful encounter, the terrible dreams are a thing of the past. Though his old enemy is hardly on Bill's Christmas card list, he no longer regards him as a threat. Now Bill dreams of walking through the park with Bella, taking it in turns to throw a ball for their new dog. Somehow, he feels very close to achieving it. Dig deep. Other than a faint glow coming from one of the back rooms, the town's charity shop was in darkness, its front door firmly closed. Although it had opened in 1985, the building had been used commercially since the 1800s, when it had variously been a pharmacy, a bank, and a tavern. The shop was close to the river in Marpleton, a pleasant English market town which had once been home to a nearby priory. In ancient times, monks had wandered back and forth to sell their wares at a market which still existed in diminished form across the road. Regulars were now peering through the shop window. but the main lights stayed off. A few of the shop's helpers were huddled in the back room. Patrick, the treasurer, had collected the spare keys from the greengrocer to let them in. The gatherers were addressing one topic, namely, why their long-serving manager, Rhea, had failed to open up the day before. "I just can't understand it," Ivy, one of the shop's founding members, said. "I've never known her not to turn up, unless she's on holiday. In all the years I've known Rhea, she's never had a day's sickness." "Wasn't she going to New Zealand to visit her sister?" Patrick asked. "She was, but not until the following week. It's in the shop diary. Here, take a look." Ivy tapped the relevant pages meaningfully. "I'm not doubting you, Ivy, but she may have got the dates wrong. She wasn't in the habit of making mistakes." Ivy's loyalty knew no bounds. Patrick adopted a different approach. "You've tried Rhea's landline, I take it, several times. Each time, it went straight to answer phone." "Right. Still, I expect we're worrying over nothing. But you have to admit, she has been a bit distracted lately," someone piped up. Patrick turned to Silvana hopefully, but she shook her head. "I've tried her on her mobile, but nothing." Silvana was a refugee who had joined the shop 2 years earlier. Since Rhea had taken her under her wing when she first came to England, her English had improved markedly. Silvana had been on the verge of admitting her true feelings for Rhea. Reality had crushed the likelihood of her returning to her homeland anytime soon, and been replaced by something entirely unexpected. An overwhelming love for another human being. Silvana's great wish was to know whether that love was returned. Rhea clearly liked her, but was it worth risking their friendship for more? The path to such an admission seemed littered with obstacles. Now, the mystery of Rhea's whereabouts could be added to an already growing list. "Dad, did Rhea say anything about changing her holiday plans, Silvana?" Patrick asked, determined to get to the bottom of things. "No, I went to her house for my lesson last Wednesday. She told me she'd be away all next week." Silvana had considered the matter carefully. "Yes, that is so." Patrick said. "I guess I'll have to contact the area manager about reopening the shop." "You'll need to do that. Volunteer phone numbers are stored in the locked cabinet, and only Rhea has the key," Ivy interjected. "Head office have contact numbers too." Everyone knew Rhea always carried a set of keys on a fob attached to a waistband. Patrick joked she secretly had a cellar key for the shop's more trying customers, to which he'd received an enigmatic smile. The actual cellar key had supposedly vanished in the mists of time. Certainly, there was no call to use the cellar, with ample storage space elsewhere. In any case, the cellar door was kept permanently locked, preventing anyone getting trapped if there was a fire. Patrick scrutinized the rota sheets. "Maybe Judd would be willing to help if we reopen the shop," he suggested. Silvana, who distrusted Judd, said nothing. 3 months earlier, dressed in black jeans and hoodie, and trailed by a mournful cocker spaniel, Judd had shown up to inquire about volunteering. When Silvana had bent to pat his dog, It had backed off, whimpering. "She gets nervous round new people," Judd had explained, tucking away the banking money. Patrick had gone to fetch Rhea. "A young man's inquiring about volunteering," he'd told her. "Shall I send him through? What's he like?" Rhea was wearily tapping information into the computer at her desk. "He seems pleasant enough. His dog's rather nervous." Rhea massaged her aching neck. "Send him through," she said. Rhea had confided in Silvana about her difficulty in getting references for Judd Dig Deep. Eventually, he'd presented her with 2 typed ones, supposedly from an ex-employer. With typical thoroughness, Rhea had rung one of the numbers to learn more about the new helper. When a voice answered, sounding suspiciously like Judd's, she'd intended to investigate further. However, other things had intervened. A few weeks after this uncharacteristic omission, Judd was indeed proving to be an asset. Willing to turn his hand to anything, it was a relief not having to lift heavy sacks and boxes donated by the public from one end of the shop to the other. With little guidance, Judd had transformed one of the sorting rooms, leaving it immaculate. One evening, when Silvana cycled past the back of the shop, she noticed a group of undesirables hanging with Judd, engrossed in conversation. She hurried past, hoping she hadn't been seen. She raised her concerns to Rhea, who told her it was nothing to worry about, that she'd keep an eye on things, and bafflingly added, "I'd rather you didn't mention this to anyone else." The day the shop reopened, without Rhea at the helm, was Silvana's birthday. Patrick invited her to join him later for one of his wife's specials, homemade pizza and pear wine. The food tasted delicious, but she pushed her plate to one side. "You're still worried about Rhea, aren't you?" Patrick observed. "Her cell phone is dead. It's strange. I knocked on her door last night, but still no answer." Patrick got up. "I tell you what, I happen to know Rhea's neighbor, Angela, from the book club. She looks after the garden when Rhea goes away. She may well have a spare key. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but it wouldn't do any harm to check if everything is all right." Silvana was relieved. "That's a great idea. Thanks, Patrick. I've been known to have a few in my time. Come on, get your coat. Let's see if we can solve this mystery." Half an hour later, the pair were standing in Rhea's house. The hallway led into an open-plan kitchen diner with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art gadgets. The smell of coffee lingered invitingly. When Rhea's partner, Lindsay, had died 5 years earlier, she'd left her with a generous insurance payout. Silvana sighed, remembering the other day when she and Rhea had drawn close over a bottle of wine. Rhea had even given her a present, only to be opened on your birthday, she instructed. But beneath the gaiety, she'd been out of sorts. Rhea had brushed aside Silvana's offer of help with a brisk, "I'm fine. I'll check down here if you do upstairs," Patrick said, jolting Silvana back to the present. The passport was lying on the bedside table. However, the photograph bore little resemblance to the person Silvana had come to love and admire. Having spent time working for a private detective agency when she was younger, instinct overrode caution, and she began a meticulous search for clues. Predictably, Ria's shop keys were lying on the bedside table. More unexpected was the discovery of another set of keys attached to a ring with a tag labeled cellar. "Are you all right?" Patrick called up from the bottom of the staircase. "I'm okay." Silvana tucked the cellar keys into her bag. Then she remembered Ria's present and opened it. She was surprised to find a pay-as-you-go phone, already charged up. "Well," Patrick exclaimed, "did you find anything?" "Just this." She gave him the passport. "That's odd. It appears she never made it to New Zealand after all. Maybe it's time to involve the police." "What? Right now? It is rather late. I doubt they'll want to be disturbed tonight." Patrick thought of the half-opened bottle of wine waiting back home. "I'll act tomorrow morning. Shall I walk you back?" "No need. I can take care of myself," Silvana said firmly. Certo. The moon was her only companion as Silvana descended the cellar steps at the back of the shop. With growing unease, she encased her hands in a pair of gloves and took off her shoes. She didn't want anyone to know of her presence. After 3 attempts, the door creaked open, and she was met by a cloying damp, overlaid by something else, something unpleasant. Tensing, she flicked on her phone torch and spotted a narrow corridor with another door at the end. Filled with foreboding, she slowly turned the handle. She smelt the body before she saw it. Wearing the trademark hoodie, the bloating, discolored thing in front of her, could hardly be called human. Judd lay slumped against an upturned table, his eyes staring and opaque. Silvana covered her face with a handkerchief to prevent retching and inspected the scene, noting the bloodied head and smashed vase lying beside it. The blood had pooled and dried, staining the clothes and floor. She was no expert, but if the rotting undertones were anything to go by, death had probably occurred a few days earlier. Even then, horror was blunted by relief. So long as it wasn't Ria, she had the strength for anything. But where was Ria? Adjusting to the dimness, Silvana tried to make sense of her surroundings. Some crudely constructed shelves, filled with storage tubs and packets, lay stacked against one of the walls. The place was obviously some kind of drugs den. Could Judd's death have been the result of a disagreement with other gang members? Silvana's stomach lurched. What if they turned up and found her? She'd only just locked the cellar door and picked up her shoes when she heard voices on the driveway. Somehow, she managed to scramble behind one of the bins underneath the fire escape. Hardly daring to breathe, she waited until the scuffling feet passed, and the gang disappeared down the cellar steps. Then, she bolted into the night as fast as her trembling legs would carry her. She would decide what to do when she got home. Halfway across the town's park, muffled ringtones came from her bag. "Silvana?" The voice was clear as day at the other end of the line. "Ria, is it really you? Thank God. Are you all right? Where are you calling from? Talk to me. If I tell you, you must keep it to yourself," Ria said urgently. "Of course. By the way, I have your keys." "The shop keys? The cellar keys? Long story. I have just been down there. I found him. Judd. Dead. It was horrible." Silvana began to laugh hysterically as the shock kicked in. "You went into the cellar?" Ria repeated. "Why? I needed to know if you were all right. I was so afraid. I was going to find you, not him. When I saw your passport, I knew you couldn't have gone abroad, that something must have happened. I didn't get the chance. What happened? I will tell you, but not now. Not on the phone. Patrick is planning to go to the police tomorrow about your passport," Ria asked. "Did you touch anything when you went into the cellar? Did you touch him?" "No." Silvana's teeth were chattering from shock. "It's cold outside. I was wearing gloves." "But what do you know about Judd? Why were you wearing gloves?" "I don't know. I had a bad feeling. I didn't want to be implicated in anything. Back home, I once worked at a detective agency. I learned about not touching crime scenes." "You may want to call the police," Ria said. "But please, can I ask you not to tell them I got in contact, or about me giving you the phone? We'll meet soon. That is, if you want to. I'll understand if you don't want anything more to do with me." "Of course I want to meet you." It seemed silly pretending now. "It's all I think about." Cha. Silvana's heart flipped when she saw the distant figure standing on the pier below. The matinee performance at the Pavilion Theater was in full swing, and the pier was almost deserted. She came up behind Ria, patting her on the shoulder. "Hey," Ria turned, instantly relaxing when she saw her friend. "Hey." Silvana sank into Ria's arms. For a long time, the pair embraced. "It's so good to see you," Silvana said. "Likewise." Ria glanced round. "Does anyone know you're here?" "No." "And I'm so hungry." Ria grinned. "How about some fish and chips? I'll treat you." "You mean the famous English fish and chips?" Ria grinned. "I've discovered a great place on the front." She linked arms with Silvana. "Come on, let's eat. Then I'll tell you everything." "Cha, Judd was a bad lot," Ria admitted later. "He was running a drug racket, and I threatened to report him to the police. It doesn't surprise me. But how did you find out?" "Not long after I joined the shop, I was clearing up one of the back rooms and came across a discarded cabinet. There were 2 sets of cellar keys in it. I never told anyone about them, partly because I didn't want a lot of fuss. I wanted to keep it to myself. Unfortunately, Judd caught me coming up the stairs one evening and demanded to store his things there. I didn't like the way he spoke to me. When I refused, he threatened to torture his dog in front of me. He implied if I didn't comply, I'd be next. His eyes were so cold. For the second time in my life, I felt real fear. There would be time enough to ask about the first time, Silvana thought, clasping Ria's hand. I'm afraid there's more, Ria said dully. You probably won't want anything to do with me when you hear the rest. Silvana clutched Ria's hand more tightly. She'd come too far to be brushed aside. Why don't you let me be the judge of that? She said firmly. Whatever it is, we'll bear it together. You see, I love you. I need you to know that. You do? For a moment, Ria's face shone. That's a relief, she said, laughing. I thought it was just me. Did you? Silvana laughed too. I may have had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything. Oh, I'm so happy, Silvana said. But hold your horses before we get carried away, Ria warned. Hold my horses? An English expression. It means don't count your chickens. Count my chickens? Silvana, my love, let me finish my story before you say anything. Okay, sorry. Silvana nibbled a stray chip. Ria was smiling in spite of everything. In the end, I couldn't stand being held to ransom by a bully like Judd. A few days ago, I foolishly decided to confront him in the cellar. He went to grab a knife from the table. There was an old jar on one of the shelves, and as he turned, I smashed it over his head. She shuddered. I couldn't tell you all this, but I made sure you had the phone before I left. I hoped you'd stay in touch. The day after, I headed here, not wanting to be traced. I paid for everything with cash, but surely the police will realize you only acted in self-defense, Silvana insisted. Perhaps I should have gone to them straight away, but I couldn't face it. Ria's hesitation was palpable, especially considering what? In spite of the warmth between them, Silvana felt a sudden chill, like someone walking over a grave. What aren't you telling me? Ria's voice broke. I'm terminally ill. At best, I only have months to live. At worst, it will be weeks. I have all the medication I need. I just want to spend my last days in a place with happy memories. I can't believe it. But Silvana knew Ria was speaking the truth. She tried to disguise her anguish. How long have you known? She whispered. I only found out for certain the day before Judd threatened me in the cellar. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. I should have told the police everything long before, but by then, I was in too deep. I'm going to stay with you. Silvana had never been more certain of anything. Ria shook her head. Stay with me tonight, and go back tomorrow. It won't be long before the police check the cellar. It will look odd if you're not there. I have every faith in your survival skills. Look how far you've come. In the meantime, there's something I want you to have. What is it? Ria handed Silvana 2 envelopes. Inside one is a plan of the cellar. After years of searching, I think I may have finally uncovered the sealed entrance to a tunnel leading to the old priory. My father was a historian and suspected there might be one near the shop. The other is a copy of my will. It's my final and dearest wish to make your life better when I've gone. Past imperfect, Bill sat bolt upright into the hotel bed, heart pounding to a familiar refrain. The dream had reasserted itself with a vengeance. From the moment he'd seen the updated list of people attending the conference, one name had stood out. Dake Scratchard was the name of the boy who'd haunted Bill Brown's life more years than he cared to remember. Dreams, fueled by past memories, disturbed his nights when equal amounts of dread and fear surged through his veins, rendering him helpless. As always, the nightmare was a variation on a theme. In it, Bill was a teenage boy running from the gang. He often came close to evading capture, but at the last minute tripped over his shoelaces or some other encumbrance. Then he found himself falling flat on his face outside the old school toilets, the inner doors of which rose up like whited sepulchres. Up close, he could see every cell of his tormentor's face. "Ginger needs to be taught a lesson," came out of that hate-filled mouth. A bully, aided by his contemptible band of followers, with their menacing chants of "Ginger, Ginger, Ginger." Even now, their words filled the corridors of his mind like a background hiss. "No." The sound seemed to come from somewhere outside, as if it belonged to someone else. Not him. "You're just begging for it, Billy Ginger. If the teachers won't correct you, we must do it for them." Billy knew no teacher would come. They were never there when you needed them. In any case, the gang always had some lackey watching out. Soon they'd have him crawling on his hands and knees, scooting about like an insect while they kicked him on the hard stone floor. Their mocking jeers running through him, he was nothing more than a piece of meat to be hauled about. For them, the high point was shoving his face into the toilet bowl. The stench was the least of it. Clinging for support, he tried to keep everything tight shut while they flushed. Knowing he could not hold out for long, he spluttered to be let go. Then, just as he was about to give up, a final flush signaled his release. He was pulled up, squirming like a rat from a sewer, and left heaving on the floor. For a few minutes, he lay there curled and defenseless, all resistance gone, until the next time, and the time after that. Something so primal, so feral. He could smell it now. Even after all this time, he was defined by it, as if the abuse had become part of a warped pattern of D and A, making him only half human. But somehow, he'd known he was worth more than that. At least his dog seemed to think so. Through it all, the only thing that kept Bill going was the thought of the black Labrador faithfully waiting in the porch. Back home, Kelpie licked away the wounds and salt tears, stayed beside him till the pain subsided. Without Kelpie, he would not have survived. For the purity of a dog's heart knows no bounds.
Shine.
Switching on the bedside lamp, Bill waited until his breathing steadied. Coughing, he climbed into a dressing gown and stepped out onto a small balcony. In the courtyard below, the air was prescient with a damp chill. A few lone trees were scattering leaves, marking the onset of winter. Inhaling a sneaky cigarette, Bill considered his options. It had all happened so long ago, yet the dream had reignited the past, making him feel he could never escape its clutches. If Bill recited the facts of his life enough times, he almost convinced himself of their worth. On paper, he'd worked hard, got married and divorced, and had a son he barely saw. He'd mostly married his wife to please his father because she came from a better background, and look where that had got him. It wasn't his ex's fault if along the way he'd supplemented whatever was missing with a few women he was physically attracted to, but not much else. In the end, it had been like ships passing in the night, all except for Bella. With her, he'd come close to casting a loveless marriage aside, but in the end, something had stopped him. The risk of getting it wrong had been too great, but all that was in the past. Although Bella had recently returned to the company where they both worked, albeit in a less demanding role, he rarely saw her these days. And according to rumors, she was now with someone. In the shower, Bill imagined washing the past down the plug hole. Soon he planned to do just that. The only fly in the ointment, of course, was Bella. He wasn't sure whether she'd be attending the conference. Really, bumping into her was the least of his worries. But if he did, so be it. He hadn't actually seen her name on the list of attendees, so it seemed unlikely. Overall, it would be easier if she didn't attend, because that afternoon, Bill was making his first big speech in his new role as Regional Operations Manager. As if there wasn't enough going on without having to deal with affairs of the heart. The speech, eagerly anticipated, was expected to be the highlight of the day.
Shine.
In the hotel room, examining the set of knives his father had given him as an 18th birthday present, Bill was confronted by powerful emotions. Before him were a dazzling array of sharp pieces, all with wooden handles for an extra firm grip. It was almost pleasurable selecting the one with the pointed end. He carefully placed it in a sheath and adding it to a concealed section of his briefcase. In the mirror, he observed hair that was thinning a little at the sides. Other than that, it was still thick and brown with just a hint of chestnut. Impressive in a well-cut suit, he was tall enough to be considered distinguished. To some, his features might be regarded as handsome. His eyes, however, were preternaturally bright. Sighing deeply, he exited the room. Clutching his laptop and briefcase, he made his way along the plushly carpeted corridor, entered the lift, and headed the 3 floors down to the conference room area. psyching himself up for whatever lay ahead. He focused on his achievements. Only by drawing on every retail milestone was he able to make sense of the wasteland that was his emotional life. His mind's eye framed the certificates that took pride of place on his home office wall, charting his journey from sales assistant to the coveted role of regional operations manager for one of the country's most successful chain stores. Stores that sold fashionable clothes and accessories for prices most people could afford. Bill's journey into a better life had only really begun when his parents had moved from a London suburb to a city in the Midlands. Then, aged 15, he'd welcomed the move with open arms, for it had given him a chance to start afresh in a place where no one knew him, especially at school. He had loved walking unrecognized through the city's streets and visiting its ancient cathedral. One Saturday morning, plucking up courage, he'd walked into one of the city's department stores and landed himself a Saturday job in the menswear department. When he returned home, his mum made him a cup of tea, and Kelpie wagged a warm greeting. "You could do a lot worse. They've got people queuing up to get a place in that store," his mum had commented. Then, examining him more closely, she observed, "You've darkened your hair. Isn't that what Elvis Presley did?" "I expect so. I never liked my natural color, and I want to fit in at this school." That was the closest he'd come to admitting the bullying at his old school. He never told anyone about the suicidal thoughts. He couldn't miss her. Bella was a figure of light, breaking the conference room formality and wearing the most distinctive outfit. To him, she was the classiest person there, surrounded as she was by an adoring team of managers at one of the middle tables. Distracted by her presence, he could hardly wait for a chance to speak to her. The chance came while she was lining up to choose from a tray of canapés during the lunch break. "I wasn't expecting you to be here, Bella," he said. "I wasn't expecting to be here, but there was a change of plan. It's so good to see you," he found himself saying. "Well, I missed the company and the people. I wasn't the right fit for the new position, even if it was a promotion. It seemed fortuitous when my old vacancy came up again." "So, you didn't have a problem with going back to your old role?" "There's no need to avoid using the word demotion." "I won't be offended," she laughed. "I came to realize I didn't need all the hassle that goes with a high-powered job. I realized I'd made a mistake, and the opportunity came to rectify it. I want a simple life, especially now I'm single. Don't worry. It's all worked out for the best. He wasn't right for me either." Bill could hardly believe what he was hearing. "It's really good to see you," he said again. "I'm glad you think that," she said, smiling brightly. Catching up with Bella had been great. So much so, watching her sleeping the next morning, Bill had almost forgotten about the other thing. He decided he'd know what to do when the time came. If it came, Bill was pouring coffee when Bella opened her eyes. They were warm, like Kelpie's had once been. "That smells good," she said. "I remembered you like it's strong." The world outside remained foggy and damp, but for the moment, none of that mattered. Fully dressed, Bill joined Bella on the bed. "What's the matter? You look like you've got the world on your shoulders," she said kindly. "Nothing. Just the conference. A lot to think about." But that was only partly true. If only he could tell her what was really on his mind. Part of him wondered whether meeting Bella again was purely coincidental, or a sign he should let the past go once and for all. He might have said more, but then the phone rang. "Good luck with the speech. Not that you're going to need it," Bella said, getting up and kissing him. On the way to the conference room, Bill overheard a conversation between two hotel staff members. "Are the cameras still out?" "Only on the 3rd floor. Also, the ones by the bathroom. They're down, too." "Okay, not good. How long before they are fixed?" "A few hours at most. Maintenance will get it sorted. It won't affect the general running of things." Bill felt almost disappointed to hear the news about the cameras. After his night with Bella, he'd been on the verge of scrapping his original plan. Now fate seemed to be pulling him back. Yet he still hadn't come across his nemesis. About 40 minutes into the second day of conference, a man best described as nondescript entered the hall. Head down, he weaved his way to the numbered seat. Bill clocked him, and his heart sank. Something of the man's stance reminded him of Dake Scratchard grown older. But was it him? He couldn't be sure. 2 hours into the conference, during the talk on sustainability, the man scurried towards one of the exits, and all doubt vanished. Shriveled he might be, but it was definitely Scratchard. Galvanized into action, Bill left his seat and headed for the nearest exit. Gripping his case so tightly his fingers hurt, he followed the figure until he disappeared into the bathroom. Unless he had to, Bill generally avoided public bathrooms. But this was going to be the exception. Adrenaline flooding through him, he quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Other than a pulsing through his ears and the sound of a dripping tap, all was quiet. Then he heard a retching coming from one of the cubicles. A minute later, the door opened and Scratchard stepped out. Engrossed in his own suffering, he ran to the nearest sink and stood there, heaving. Watching unobserved, Bill was torn between revulsion and an intense hatred. Mostly he was seized by a hatred for all he'd been put through, overcome by a rage for the way this pathetic being had ruined so much of his life. It was too late to change his mind now. The die was cast. Gripping the knife, he advanced, his anger rising to a peak. Suddenly, the bathroom door sprang open, and to his astonishment, Bella entered. She came and stood behind him, putting her arms round his waist. Then, opening his fist, she carefully removed the knife from his hand and put it behind her back. "It's not the answer," she whispered, hurriedly placing it in her bag. It all seemed to happen in slow motion. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Startled out of his sickness, Bill's childhood enemy locked eyes with his victim in the mirror. Both men were shaking, one from the effects of illness, the other from the horror of what might have been. "What the hell?" Scratchard broke out. Then there was a flash of recognition as the years fell back. "Surely not. I wasn't sure if it was you in the meeting, probably because your hair is different. But it's Ginger Bill, isn't it? Only the last time I saw you." The words trailed off, vanished into the unknown. "But you never did see me," Bill said through gritted teeth. "All you saw was a weak boy you could bully because of his hair color. As I recall, the last time I saw you and your sick gang, you'd forced my head down the bog. Have you any idea what that does to someone? Did I do that?" Dake's face reddened. "I was a bit of a jerk in those days. If it's any consolation, life hasn't exactly treated me well. As you can see, I'm not a well man." The edges blurring, Bill felt the first stirrings of pity. "What's actually wrong with you, Scratchard?" Calling him by his surname felt like a minor victory. He'd never dared call him anything in school. Dake shook his head despairingly. "If it's not one thing, it's another these days. I had heart trouble a few years ago, and now this. I keep having to running to the toilet and have a raging thirst." "You need medical attention," Bella said unexpectedly. "You're showing all the signs of severe diabetes. My father got like that before he was diagnosed." 10 minutes later, Bill was sitting with his childhood tormentor in the lobby, waiting for assistance. "I'm sorry for making your school life hard," Dake muttered, unable to meet Bill's eyes. "It was worse than that. You bullied me to the point I didn't feel life was worth living. Why did you? I need to know," Bill demanded. Dake searched what remained of his soul for answers. "I don't know," he admitted at last. "Maybe it made me feel more in control. Life was miserable at home, and at school, I was somebody in front of the other kids." The rest of the day passed in a blur. But Bill somehow found the strength to get through his talk. He got a good reception at the end, and he couldn't help noticing Bella was clapping the hardest. "What made you come into the bathroom like that?" he asked her much later. "I couldn't believe it when I saw you there. You kept saying his name in your sleep, saying you're dead over and over. I haven't forgotten the nightmares you had when we were together before. Imagine what would have happened if you hadn't appeared, Bella. It doesn't bear thinking about," she said. "If you want us to make a go of this, you've got to promise me you're going to get help. The past will always get in the way if you don't." It turned out to be an easy promise to keep. More than a year after that fateful encounter, the terrible dreams are a thing of the past. Though his old enemy is hardly on Bill's Christmas card list, he no longer regards him as a threat. Now, Bill dreams of walking through the park with Bella, taking it in turns to throw a ball for their new dog. Somehow, he feels very close to achieving it. where time almost stands still. Okay, how do we start this story? We could start it with character descriptions. Nah, that's on you and your imagination. We could write a beautiful description of atmosphere and breathtaking elements. Nah, not going to happen. Then how? Fuck it, let's just go. Cole Johnson's entries. Day 104. I went to court today. It was some good, some bad. I was offered 24 years. That's good. I won't see Sally or my children for 8,760 days. That's bad. This is a decision I must absorb. My attorney says it's the best I will get and advises I take it. I won't. I did not do anything wrong. Today is chicken on the bone day, so I'm going to be quick in my documentation of my thoughts to you, world. Philip will be done working out soon, too. This place is so hard, but at least I have Sally's calls to look forward to. World, if you have an ounce of compassion, please forgive me. I did nothing wrong. As Cole finished his diary entry, he knew it was close to chow time, and he had his chicken already sold. It was a different kind of currency behind these walls. Instead of dollars and cents, it was items like soup and peanut butter. Chicken went for 5 soups, which was considered to be very expensive. We will talk about this again. Day 162. I talked to Sally today. She's so amazing. I really miss her caress, her lustful look that she always had when she gazed upon me. She had eyes that you could feel deep in your heart. They were inviting. I could see she was deep in thought about me, and I could almost reach into them and pull her soul into mine. We talked about our normal topics at first: bills, her work, our longing for each other. The one thing we never discussed was my crime or my potential sentence. I know what's coming, and she does as well. I told her how much I missed her. We recalled our first date for the 500th time, but it was a story that made us both smile and laugh. These memories were all we had now. Cole had to get 16 soups, 4 honey buns, and 2 bags of Doritos together. He had run up a debt, expecting Sally to help him with commissary. This debt was caused by the paper and pen he negotiated for, which was hard to acquire in this place. He wanted to write Sally letters, as well as his children. Although, there were other ways to earn items when you're broke. We will not get into that unpleasantness right now. Day 315. I finally acquired a pen. These golf pencils are only good for writing these entries, not really meant for the long letters I want to write for my children and Sally. Baby mama will no longer let the children take my calls, so getting this pen now was perfect timing. Question is, will the price I paid for it come back to haunt me? In here, debt is bad, so I don't know what will happen. I need to sell more spice, but I have been transferred to the 600 block, which is all pizza and folks that don't do drugs. Ugh, it's always something. I guess I will write my children. It has been over 60 days since we spoke. I really hope their mom reads these letters to my kiddos. Cole had procured that pen at a great cost, pretty much all of his commissary, so he had to reach out to others to try and get the funds so he could get more commissary. This was not on his top 10 list of favorite things to do. He would have to call his brother. His mother was just a poor waitress, so his only other option was his brother. Cole's mentality was changing inside those walls. Never before would he even have fathomed begging his brother. He always found a way to get things on his own. Now everything was different. He was dependent on help from outside these walls and barbed wire fences. Day 461. I am losing all love, it feels like. All I see is hate, greed, and controlled movements. The only thing I have anymore is Sally. She has been sick so much lately that she has not been able to help much. Our phone calls are spread out now and have become less frequent due to the financial burdens I bring. I am contemplating letting her go. We will never make love, touch, or even be allowed to see each other face to face given our great distance. She will never be able to afford that trip. Also, no letters from children. I am truly alone. People think they understand this world, but they don't. Why do I deserve this? What did I do? Cole was disappearing now. As the world got faster on the outside, in those walls, time almost stood still. Every day on the outside, new cars are bought, birthdays are celebrated, technologies are created, kisses are given, and life is moving. In here, the most simple things cease to exist. Day 936. As I write to you, world, my soul is disappearing. How will I ever be able to come back into you? My beard is long, and I have encountered so many things I never knew one man could do to another. The sound of a man's last gasp of breath. Then he's gone. World, I still don't understand what my crime against you was. Why did I get put in here? What was my crime that was so bad that you felt all should be taken? The only light left for me is Sally. Her monthly call is enough to keep me from slipping into the dark abyss. She is to call at 6 p.m. I need to shower to prepare. I know she cannot see me, but I feel she does. She is my love, my life, my soulmate. Cole went to shower, and there was a group of men that was looking to retaliate for something he had no part in, but the fact he was there was good enough for them. It was a wrong place, wrong time type of deal. Day 966. World, as I write this entry, I can barely see due to the beating I took in the shower. I need your help. I missed my call with Sally. That's all I could think about as the four men repeatedly stomped my skull. I have been in the infirmary, and when I get out, I am looking at 60 days in the hole, 'cause I won't say who jumped me. So, I sit here and write, which is all I have anymore. World, you're the only one who hasn't abandoned me. Can you hear me? All I need is a small sign to know that at least you are real. You and Sally are all I have. I need you, world. The beating Cole took was severe. It fractured his skull, broke 9 ribs, and put him in the infirmary for 30 days. Due to his silence, he was going to be put in isolation for 60 days. In here, someone always has to pay. However, the whole was a lighter sentence than talking. Talking would have meant his life. Day 1027. I'm back. My wounds are better. I'm still sore, but I'm better. I will never regain the teeth that I lost. Now, every day when I look into the mirror, reflective film, taped to the wall, I get reminded of that missed phone call. I tried all day to call Sally collect, but it was not accepted. She probably found someone else. It's for the best. She deserves to move past me. I'm only a grim anchor in her life, dragging down her happiness. I guess it's just us now, world. Please send me some sign so I know you're really listening. I am so lonely now, world. Help me, so I do not become the hate that surrounds me all of the time. As Cole struggled, all communication with Sally ceased now. He was all alone. He knew now all control was gone. No word from his children, no nothing. He had only one choice now, to take the plea. He would never be able to prove his innocence. This was his life now. Day 1, 1643. Well, it's time, world. I am taking the plea. 24 years, 8,760 days, 210,240 minutes, 12,614,400 seconds. I know now that the world, yes, you, will never forgive me. Even you have to let go of me. Now, it's only these walls, this disparity. The only thing I have to look forward to is being consumed into this life. I will never admit my guilt in my heart. You, world, have let me go, so I must live only here now and continue to survive. World, goodbye. This will be my last entry. I must kill the Cole Johnson of my previous life and become the Cole Johnson behind the walls. Years passed. Then one day, a graying Cole looked under his mattress to find the journal. He picked it up and began to read. He could only sit and weep as he read words that still had a sliver of hope and moments of joy. It was an emotion that Cole had not felt in a long time. Those feelings of hope, love, ambition, and the possibility of a future were all gone now. He was covered in tattoos, not because they were cool, but because they told his story behind these walls of who he was and what he had done. As Cole held that journal and looked into that so-called mirror, he didn't recognize the man looking back at him. It was only a shell of himself. He decided to write in that journal once again. Day 6142. Well, world, it's me again. I'm sure you don't remember me. I'm the man who killed that family at that intersection on Christmas Eve many years ago. Remember me now. Why did you abandon me, world? It has not been easy. I had to kill a man, and I have been sentenced to death by lethal injection. I have tried to write the one child that survived that fateful night long ago. He is older now, and I guess has moved on. He will probably never forgive me. He will never be able to hug his sister, mother, or father ever again. I will never be able to hold Sally again, and it hurts so much. My execution has been scheduled for next Tuesday. I guess this will be my last entry. World, please let the universe know that I am sorry, and hopefully you can find a cool section of hell for me. If I could only see my love just one more time, hug my children one last time. I know now that's not possible. I hope Johnny and Allison have forgiven me and had the life they deserve and are happy. As Cole prepared to be sent into the universe, a correctional officer came into his cell to give him his last meal. He also handed him a letter. Cole stood, hoping it was a farewell from his children, or maybe even Sally. As he looked at the envelope, and he was terrified to open it. He had not seen or felt for so long, and as he began to open it, the guard told him, "We found this letter in your property, Cole. We do not know why it was overlooked, and we all thought you deserved to have it." The correctional officer left, and as Cole opened it, he noticed it was old like him. It was from Sally. It read, "My dearest Cole, I know by the time you read this I will be gone. It turned out the reason I have been so sick lately was because of the aggressive cancer inside of me. The doctors have given me only weeks to live. I am so sorry, baby. I cannot stop it. I want to tell you how much I love you. I know someday we will be together in the stars. My love, I hope this letter finds you with compassion, not fear. Everything will be okay, Cole. Even in death, I will not let go of you. I will always watch over you, my Cole. Please forgive me for leaving you. I love you so much. The doctors are coming. If I am able, I will write you again as soon as possible. Love your soulmate, Sally." All Cole could do was fall to his knees. She was always with him. He thought he was talking to the world, but it was his Sally all along, the moral of the story. The guard leading me into the room gives a hard yank on the chain. Pain lances through my neck, and I snarl, baring my impressive fangs for full effect. He shies away, naked fear on his face, before remembering which of us is supposed to be the prisoner. "Watch it, mutt, or you'll be drinking out of the toilet through a wired jaw," he says, his tough guy tone betrayed by the quaver in his voice and the stink of fear in his scent. I snort in contempt. "Oh, please, C.O. We both know who's afraid of the big bad wolf." His expression hardens, mouth tightening into a white line. One hand drops to the baton sheathed at his waist. "That will do, officer," a new voice says. "I'll ask you to do your job without further violating my client's civil rights." I look past the guard and his impotent rage to see a man sitting at the lone table in the room. The space is dimly lit, a single flickering fluorescent bulb recessed in the ceiling behind a grating. But I've got good eyesight. The guy's so short his legs barely clear the edge of the chair. I take in his expensive suit, immaculately groomed hair, and a face so wrinkled and wizened it looks like a prune staked out in the desert for a week. He smells of cologne, silk, a hint of moldy straw, and... that's curious. No fear. Not a hint of that very familiar scent. Interesting. That must mean he's either stupid or a villain. Like me. The guard secures my chain to a ring on the floor, giving me just enough play to reach my side of the table, then snaps a padlock on it with a loud click. He then steps back to stand against the wall. The short man's eyes, small, dark, and hard behind wire-rimmed glasses, flick to the guard. "Leave me alone with my client, if you please." "Not a good idea, buddy," the guard says, glancing at me. "You know who this is, right?" "Of course I do," the man snaps. "I also know the privileges that exist between the accused and his legal representation. Now, must I ask again?" The guard scowls, shakes his head, and leaves, slamming the door shut behind him. The lock on the door clicks loudly, too. I casually stretch as much as I can with the chain and collar, give a shake to fluff out my thick, gray fur. Client, eh? Funny. I don't remember hiring a lawyer. The faintest of smiles ghosts across the man's face. "You haven't, yet. But I'm certain you'll want to retain my services after you hear what I have to say." "Why's that?" I ask in the most bored tone I can manage. "Because I can make sure that you don't spend the rest of your life behind bars." I can't help it. My ears prick up at that. I force a derisive snort. "Not likely. They have a pretty good case against me. And that is precisely why you want me to represent you." A positively oily grin stretches his lips. "Allow me to introduce myself." 2 fingers extend to place a business card on the table between us. I glance down at it. Mr. R., attorney at law, specialist in defense of the wrongly accused. The black letters stand out against the crisp white, cutting across a spinning wheel picked out in gold foil. Yeah, it's a dead giveaway. Mr. Ray, that'd be short for... He raises a small hand to stop me before I can say it. I would prefer if we kept this from being a first-name relationship. Yellowed teeth glint as he grins again. "Okay," I say, with a flick of an ear. "Lawyer, now, huh? Previous line of work didn't suit you?" Let's just say that it was far too labor-intensive. I find my new career to be much more rewarding. It also didn't require much of an adjustment, ethically speaking. So, Mr. R. it is for now. For that matter, what would you like me to call you? I shrug, a human gesture I've perfected over the years. Most people just scream wolf and run away when they see me. I see. Then I shall address you as Mr. Wolf, for simplicity's sake. Whatever. Now, Mr. R. settles himself in his hard wooden chair. I'm familiar with the particulars of your case, Mr. Wolf, at least those that have been made publicly available. But perhaps you'd like to tell me your side of the story? Now, I actually laugh. My side of the story? Not a lot of people are interested in that. As far as most of them are concerned, there's only ever one side. The one where I'm the villain, just out to do villain things. It's just how the story goes. So you don't deny the charges? Well now, Mr. R, that'd be telling, wouldn't it? I may be facing the headsman's axe or life in a cage, but I don't see any reason to make it easier on everyone. Mr. Wolf, we in the legal profession are required to keep our clients' confidence and cannot be compelled to reveal what is told us in confidence. Okay, whether he's telling the truth or not, I find I just don't care. Well, yeah, I did it. Whatever they say, I did it all. Mr. R removes his glasses, pulls out a kerchief, and starts polishing the lenses. You stalked young Peter and his friends and attempted to murder a duck, I believe. I pretend to wince. Yeah. Got so close, but she was just that lucky. I sigh. I can still taste feathers. And you destroyed the property of 3 industrious pigs? Hey, not my fault if their houses weren't up to code. Of course, then they tried to burn me alive. Lost a lot of fur on that one. Then you actually consumed a young lady and her grandmother? I give a little laugh. And the grandmother's cat. Not too many people remember that part, but I kinda missed out on the satisfaction of a good meal in the end. After I woke up on the riverbank, went through 3 surgeries to get all the rocks out of my belly, and spent 6 months in that stupid plastic cone. Well, let's just say that a certain woodsman is next on the menu if I ever get out of here. Mr. R finishes cleaning his glasses, sets them back in place, all without batting an eye. I see. So, you are guilty, and I must assume that the police have all the evidence they need, since you are sitting here before me, chained to the floor. I pull back my lips in a grin, or a snarl. Hard for me to tell the difference when I'm doing it. Like I said, I'm the villain. I do bad things. No matter how the story goes, that's always how it ends. It's the... oh, what do they call it? The moral. That's right. The moral of the story. Bad people do bad things. Mr. R arches one scraggly eyebrow. What if I told you the story doesn't have to end that way? I cock my head to one side. How's that? Mr. Wolf, my job doesn't necessarily consist of proving you innocent, Mr. R says. Not when I can make you into a victim instead of a villain. Say what? That's right, Mr. Wolf. Instead of making this about your crime, we can make it about you. We'll play up your tragic past, your difficult upbringing. Why? You said it yourself. People look at you and see nothing more than a scary animal. That's prejudice. It's colored your entire life, hasn't it? Is all I managed to get out in reply. Honestly, I'd never thought about it like that. Do you have a mate? Mr. R asks suddenly. Pups? A pack that relies on you? Needs you? What? No, nothing like that. I give my head a shake, trying to wrap my head around all this. Are you saying that you can make it look like I was the victim instead of the villain? Exactly, Mr. Wolf. Now his grin looks positively evil. We'll put you in front of the cameras, paint you a tragic victim of circumstances and biases. All that's required is the right spin on the facts. And believe me, Mr. Wolf, I know how to put the right spin on things. No doubt. All of this is confusing, and well, kinda disgusting. Look, why go through all that? Just post my bail and I'll skip town, how about? I'm only half joking. Again, he arches that eyebrow. To go on the run? To be hunted and hounded the rest of your life? Now I grin. I'm the big bad wolf, remember? What you just described, that's my normal. It doesn't have to be, says Mr. R. When I'm through, you'll spend a few months in prison, after which you'll be set up for life. A comfortable den, plenty of game to hunt, even your own woods if you want. No one will dare bother you again. With enough positive media coverage, I can work out a very favorable deal for you. Deals are something of a specialty for me. Now, how's that sound? I stare at him, narrowing my eyes. What do you get out of this, Mr. Ray? Something tells me you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. He gives a short laugh. Oh, goodness no. You see, in the process of rewriting the narrative, there will be interviews, televised appearances, at least one book deal. That means money, Mr. Wolf. Rather, a lot of money. His oily grin reappears, and I get 50%. Oh, now that's disgusting, sickening. He wants me to lie about what I am, pretend to be something I'm not. A victim, a weak, pathetic, mewling victim, and all so he can exploit my villainy for cash? I don't know, I say. It all sounds like a big lie to me. And you've never lied before? Something about his tone of voice, so cocky and superior, makes my hackles rise. Literally. I seem to recall one of the charges is impersonating a little old lady. That's rather dishonest, don't you think? I growl deep in my throat. I like to think of it as deceptive. A predator has to be cunning after all. Indeed. Come now, Mr. Wolf. Let's stop bandying words. He lifts a briefcase onto the table, snaps it open, and produces a gold fountain pen with a flourish. You just sign these documents, and I'll get started turning you into the tragic victim. A victim. Me. I'm a villain. I made the choices that made me a villain. And to be honest, I never really regretted it until I got caught. If not for that woodsman, I'd still be out there, stalking Peter and his friends, blowing down pigs' houses, and looking for my next Little Red Riding Hood. But then, look where being the villain has gotten me. In this room, with a scumbag who wants me to lie, tell people a sob story, deny what I am just so I won't be punished for the wrong I've done, and he can make a lot of money. I think Mr. R is a worse villain than I am, and he's definitely not the kind of villain I want to be. Now let's get this straightened out, I say, the words coming out from behind bared fangs. I'm a villain. I know I'm a villain. I own that. I'd rather just accept that I've done wrong and take what I've got coming. Mr. R purses his lips like he's tasted something really sour. Mr. Wolf, please be reasonable. I think you'd better get out of here, Mr. R, before I start naming names, or I could just gobble you up. Your pick. Mr. Wolf. I lunge forward, straining the chain to its limits. Planting my forepaws on the table, I let out a savage bark, jaws snapping, spattering drool all over Mr. R's nice suit and shiny glasses. He lurches backwards, tumbling out of the chair, briefcase and pen flying across the room. A second later, he scrambles back to his feet, staring at me, eyes wide, and darts for the door. Now I smell it. The fear. Its stink is thick and rank. I guess he really isn't stupid. With one hand on the doorknob, he pauses, glancing back at me. You know they will never stop seeing you as a villain. They will hunt and persecute you, no matter what you do. Maybe so, I reply, suddenly tired of this whole thing. But maybe I've earned that. Maybe if I want that to change, I need to show them that I can change too. I shrug. So, even though I'm the villain in this story, maybe I can still do the right thing. Maybe that's the moral of the story, Better Fires. Dear Jay, I lit the mailbox on fire when I saw you kissing M. Others told me that when feeling too much, one might hurt oneself. There might be cuts along the arm or starvation. I had no inclination toward self-harm. From a very young age, I understood that the world does enough to you. Why do any more to yourself? I saw you kissing M behind the cafetorium, and I ran all 7 blocks home. On the way, I saw the Gozer's blue mailbox, and I knew it had to burn. 1 match around the base, and it went up quickly along with whatever mail was inside of it. The red flag was up, and I did it anyway. Later that night, I attended a slumber party and started the rumor that you had done it, that I often saw you lighting ants on fire with a magnifying glass as though that was a natural origin for someone who would eventually begin setting better fires. Some of the girls believed me. Some didn't care. One told me that you kissed her after her shift at Pizza Grace, and your mouth tasted like a fountain drink. I watched her after she fell asleep. I visualized her waking up to find her hair on fire, but I didn't do it. I didn't want to hurt anyone, not even you. When I asked you to the dance, you told me that you'd already agreed to go with G, even though that was a lie. I knew it was a lie, because I knew enough about you by then. When you lied, your left eyebrow would twitch. Maybe it still does. Do you still lie? Would you tell me if you did? I told you that I understood and wished you well. I knew that you were going to ask G as soon as I was out of sight. Then, if you changed your mind, you'd simply pick someone else to bring. What you were never going to do is show up with me. Not me. The girl who had to wear baggy tops to hide how much she developed between sophomore and junior year. Not me. The know-it-all who the teachers had stopped calling on, because she always knew the path Napoleon took on his first campaign and the first 15 numbers of pi. I don't think intelligence was a turnoff for you. On the contrary, I think you wanted me to be smarter. You wanted me to be so smart that kissing me would be like allowing dark matter down your throat to rip you apart from the inside. You held me to a different standard. I'm sorry, Jay. I didn't know that's what was going on. I thought you just wanted to kiss the prettiest girls in the school. I never investigated what your deeper motives might have been. The day you told me you couldn't take me to the cotton candy dance, I went to the greeting card store in town and set fire to all the Get Well cards. They were at the back of the store, and there was only one cashier working. I made quite a pile, struck the match, and walked right out. By the time the smoke alarm went off, I was already watching from down the street. Lucky for me, greeting card establishments don't have security cameras. I went to a pool party the following weekend and told everyone there that you'd confessed to me a year ago that you hated greeting cards. Seeds were planted. A freshman who was at the party told me that you'd been putting removable tattoos in her locker. Hearts with knives in them, and mermaids who refused to smile. She pulled down her bathing suit bottom and showed me where she'd placed one of the tattoos. It looked like Joan of Arc tied up and suffering her great punishment. I think you're right, she whispered to me in between bites of a burnt hamburger. I think he might be obsessed with fires. Why else would he give me this? The world will give you all the answers you want if you know exactly how to phrase the questions. On the way home from the pool party that day, I saw you in your front yard, mowing the lawn without a shirt on. I waved to you, and you waved back. You flexed for me, and then laughed. I saw a clean line of sweat going down your back to the gray t-shirt that was tucked into your red shorts. I wanted to cover myself in grass and let you run over me. It took me a moment to realize that my hand was still raised in a frozen greeting. You had stopped my time. You'd put me in a deep freeze. Only one thing could dissolve it. The day before graduation, I burned down the school. Part of me knew that eventually it would come to that. I'd used my allowance every week to buy kerosene, matches, bottles, rags, and any other accelerant I could find. The man at the hardware store questioned me about it early on, but I told him that teenage girls were using these types of things to help with our hormones. He seemed perplexed, but no man over 40 wants to know why teenage girls are doing any of the things they do. The next time I came in, he'd set aside some paint thinner for me. It was on sale, 2 for 1. That's what I used in the second-floor bathrooms. There was no commencement that year, no caps, no gowns. The only thing thrown up in the air was the spray of a fireman's hose. Students gathered around the periphery of the school. Some cried. I held my homeroom teacher as she asked why anyone would do something like this. I knew that the two of you were writing inappropriate notes to each other between periods. She must have justified it by telling herself that you were mature for your age. And maybe she was right. I try not to condemn anyone if I can help it. The worst condemnation of all has already occurred. The day of the school fire was also the day of the harvest. Everything I'd put into the ground was ready to be reaped. Rumors about your love of starting fires were too widespread to ignore, even though, in many ways, you were the town's favorite son. Your father had been the star linebacker for the football team back when he was in school. Your mother was valedictorian. You were going to do great things, and you were going to go far, and you were going to kiss every girl you wanted to kiss, and never give me more than a wave or a flex of your muscles only to laugh at me for staring. All of that got burned up and turned to rubbish. You went to jail for the very first time. When you got out, you couldn't find a job. Your parents disowned you. You couldn't even find a woman gullible enough to take you in, because by then, you reeked of smoke. Soon, you were dealing drugs and holding up food marts and gas stations. I lost track of how often you were in and out of prison, but I know you're there now, and I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry for the part I played. I'm sorry for every match I struck. I'm sorry you didn't see that I could have learned more. I could have caught on faster. I could have bloomed had you only allowed me some light. When you get out, I plan to be waiting for you. I'll pick you up and you can come stay with me. You can mow my lawn. You don't have to give me anything, just the respect I was owed back when we were children. Back when you thought a little cold water would put me out. You never knew that I was electric, did you, Jay? You never tasted my grease. You never thought to smother me. A little cold water. What was that going to do? I'll be standing at the gates when they release you. I'll bring the cigarettes you like. I'll light the first one. Then, I want a kiss. A nice, long kiss. I want to taste the emission. I want you to fill me up with smoke until I feel as though I'm never going to breathe again.